Alrighty, so last presenter, Dr. James Sullivan. He is a physician, MD. I think it's good to kind of get other points of view. And as he sat here through our entire convention with us and sees what we learn as technicians and what we're capable of and what we do, he has thought too it would be great for his medical profession to see things on the other end of what happens once they write the script and it goes to the pharmacy, on that end too. So this guy is my husband. So I will say that his support is, for all of us, and we appreciate it. And please help me welcome Dr. Sullivan to the podium.
Thanks, Judy, honey. Well, I really appreciate you guys having me speak. Like Judy said, I'm James Sullivan. I'm a family medicine physician. Have the dubious honor of being the last presenter. I'm pretty sure I can get through all my 87 slides in 3 hours. So we should get you out of here by 6. Just kidding. Just like I said, I'm a family medicine physician. Not too distant past in my career, I worked as a director of a clinical research clinic where I did phase 2 through 4 clinical trials. So I did that for about 3 years in a pulmonary and allergy clinic. So I did a lot of research trials. I ran a lot of research trials for respiratory meds. So I did some post-marketing work on Nasacort, Flonase. I helped bring to market Spiriva, the new COPD drug Daliresp. That's an oral medication for COPD, so things like that. So I have a little experience in running some clinical trials. So overview, objectives, I'd like to describe the processes in place to ensure medications are safe for human consumption. Explain how drugs make it to the market based on the drug development process, and just give a generalized overview of the different phases of pharmaceutical research. So, I was thinking about this. What do you think the goals of the pharmaceutical industry are? And I'm not sponsored by any pharmaceutical. So, A, maybe make a lot of money, perhaps. I like B, to outdo each other with drug names. So when I first got into medicine, I learned all these medications, and then I learned I need to know 2 names for every medication. Thank you very much. Xeljanz, Invokana, Anakinra, Moxifloxacin, Zarzio. I saw a YouTube thing on social media about a contest people were having. Is this a drug name or is it a planet from Star Wars? I thought that was pretty funny. Or is their goal to produce safe, effective, tolerable, affordable treatments for disease? Hopefully it's C. Let's think that. Quick quiz. So remember the show Name That Tune? I can name that tune in one note. What drug is this? Studied in the 1980s. Just kidding. Don't answer yet. So, this drug was actually designed for pulmonary hypertension. And thank you very much. You win the prize. So, what they found in studying this drug was there was a very interesting side effect that was happening to subjects, in particular male subjects. This drug was the largest selling drug in the history of drugs. And when it hit the market in 1998, it made $1 billion. So Viagra was actually developed for pulmonary hypertension, which is a pretty rare thing, but a very devastating disease. So the drug development process, regulated by the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Their mission is they are responsible for protecting the public health by ensuring the safety, efficacy, and security of human and veterinary drugs, biological products, and medical devices, and by ensuring the safety of our nation's food supply, cosmetics, and products that emit radiation. I don't think I've ever heard of FDA-approved mascara, but I didn't know they did that with cosmetics. But 5 steps in the development process. Step 1, discovery and development. Next step would be preclinical research. Then you move on to clinical research. Then the biggie is the FDA review. And finally, you're not done there. Once your drug gets approved by the FDA, you still got to do post-marketing safety and monitoring studies. So discovery, so how are drugs discovered? You know, it's not some nerd sitting in a lab making up an elixir and saying, hey, drink this, let's see what happens. There's some thought that goes into it. So one of those ways we discover medications is there might be some new insights in how diseases happen in human beings. So if we discover how a disease process works, we can target a drug for that disease a little better. An example would be, you know, we're learning a lot about the immune system, and a lot of diseases can be immune modulated. So we're developing a lot of immune modulator medications to treat those diseases. Testing of molecular compounds to find possible beneficial effects, kind of like drink this and see what happens. A lot of drugs come to market because we developed them for existing treatments but found they had other benefits, Viagra. So they shift to treating that kind of disease. And then this is a fascinating one. A lot of new technologies are happening in the pharmaceutical world about drug delivery. So if we can deliver a drug to an area of the body and target that area of the body of disease, we can develop new drugs for that rather than just a systemic treatment like prednisone. You know, we love prednisone, but you can't take it long term because of the systemic side effects. So if we can deliver that prednisone to the area in question, it might be a lot more effective with less side effects. So there's a lot of work going on based on that. Drug development. So once you discover a molecule, then there's a lot that goes into development. So we need to know how it's absorbed in the body, distributed, metabolized, excreted. We need to know how it works. There are a lot of drugs that we don't know the mechanism of action, surprisingly. Cyclobenzaprine. Have you ever heard Flexeril, muscle? We don't know how that works. I use an app. I don't know. This is a good app for anybody. It's a free app called Hippocrates. Do we all know about that? It's really good to have on your cell phone. I use it every day. Type in and it's free. Type in a med. It'll give you dosage indications. It'll give you a mechanism of action. So I look at a patient's med. I type in their med, and it says mechanism of action unknown. I'm like, that doesn't help me. But there are a lot of medications that have an unknown mechanism of action. Metformin is one of those too, interestingly. But anyway, development, we find out what the most effective dose might be, the best way to deliver the drug, whether it's oral, topical, IV, IM. There's many ways to deliver medications to the body. We want to know side effects or adverse events. we want to know effects on certain groups of human beings. So are there gender effects, race, ethnicity, etc.? What are some interactions it might have with other drugs? Because as we know, human beings tend to be on multiple medications, so we want to know if these drugs interact with other drugs. And then, of course, effectiveness compared with similar drugs. So there's usually not just one medication in a class. There's multiple medications, and all those pharmaceutical companies say theirs is the best and most effective. So that's a big part of the development process. Then we move on to preclinical research. So we don't just invent a molecule and throw it at human beings. We throw it at animals first. So researchers must find out whether it's going to cause potential harm. So there are two types of preclinical research. In vitro, which is test tube, petri dish, nerdy guys in a lab. Then there's in vivo, which means within the living, so that's animal testing. So that's a preclinical research trial. So based on what happens in these preclinical research studies, that's how we can move forward with clinical research. So if those rats didn't grow extra tails or die, then we can move on to preclinical research, or to move on to clinical research. So these are the human studies. This is where the rigorous drug development work happens when we get into the human studies. So once a drug company invents their molecule, does all their due diligence, discovery and development, and preclinical work, they can submit what's called an investigational new drug application. That's where they get approved by the FDA. So in this application is what their research protocols are going to be, how they're going to run their research, how many people they're going to have, what they're going to do to these people, et cetera. It's all got to be laid out. So when they do that, the FDA has 30 days to object. So when we look at clinical trials, there's 4 phases. I kind of mentioned what I did, phase 2 through 4. Phase 1 of clinical trials would be where we have the drug and we give it to healthy volunteers. So that's phase 1. These are very small numbers of people. They're usually healthy people. These trials are they're very interesting. So usually it's like college kids wanting to earn extra money. Yeah, give me that. I don't care. They usually take a long time. They're pretty tough on this research subject, actually. So usually sometimes they'll last a week, and they'll be in a hotel, and you're doing blood draws every hour for 24 hours after you give the drug, because you gotta measure what happens after you give the drug. So you're testing the safety and the dosage in the human body. So that's how usually we figure out the dosage schemes of these meds. And you always want to find the minimum dosage for the maximal benefit. So phase 1 studies set up, obviously, phase 2, and usually about 70% of medications or drugs make it to the next phase, make it out of phase 1. Phase 2 clinical trials are larger. Now we move into giving that new medication to people with the disease in question to see if it works for them. So these trials can take up to 2 years. Again, you're measuring the efficacy. Is this drug going to work for these people? Obviously, side effects and safety, you're still looking at that. And only about 1/3 of drugs make it past phase 2 clinical trials, believe it or not. So as we move in the phases, it's harder and harder to get a drug approved. Phase 3 would probably be the most important studies. These are known as pivotal studies. So larger populations of people, they have the disease in question. These can take a long time, up 1 to 4 years, even more for these protocols. And this is where most of the safety data comes from these studies, phase 3 clinical trials. Again, they're pivotal studies because this is where, we get the main treatment benefits. And coming out of phase 3, about 1/4 of the drugs make it to the next level. Phase 4 clinical trials. So after phase 3, that's when you get your FDA approval. If they approve your drug, you can hit the market. Unfortunately, drug companies, the work isn't done. You still got to do post-marketing safety trials. This is where you hear, that drug got taken off the market later, 10 years later, because we found out that it caused cancer or something. So the work of clinical trials is not over when you get FDA approved. So we're always studying medications. Phase 4 clinical trials, seems like anybody can be in them. Thousands and thousands of people who are using the drug we usually have in phase 4 clinical trials. And these can last forever, the life of the drug. So, okay. So this is my last slide. I'm only 17 minutes in, but again, I'm not sponsored by any pharmaceutical company, but there's always bad press about, all they want to do is make money. Getting a drug to market is a very rigorous process. I mean, look at the average. Some numbers say 1.8 billion. I found some data, $2.6 billion that Pfizer would have to spend to get a drug from a molecule to your shelf in your pharmacy. That's a lot of money. On top of that, it's a lot of years too. It can take over 10 years to get a drug tested and out to the market. Then there's this thing called generic or patent. So you lose your patent after once that drug is discovered, clock starts ticking. You have 20 years before it can go generic. Once it goes generic, anybody can make that drug. So now you have competition. So you could have only, depending on how long it took you, you can only have 4 years to make up your cost. So that's a huge reason why drugs cost so much. Believe me, I work with it every day. I want drugs to go generic the next day so people can get these great drugs. But these great drugs didn't fall out of the sky. Pfizer and GSK and all these companies spent a lot of money developing them and tested them. That's why we have the best system, in my opinion, in the world for drugs and treatments for diseases. So costs a lot of money. We want our patients to have them. That's why it can be tough. But and again, 1 in 30 drugs make it from phase 1 to FDA approval. So that's about a 9% approval rating. So it's not like the CEO of Pfizer wakes up and says, I want to invent a drug, and it happens. So it's a very rigorous process. Me as a physician, I'm grateful that we have a process like this, because I know when I prescribe a medication, I know it's safe and it's going to work like as advertised. So, we can have a side discussion. I get patients all the time. hey, what about this Prevagen that I read about in the newspaper? Well, did it go through the FDA process? No, it did not. I know they have a full-page ad in the paper, and it probably costs a lot more than other things, but not a good idea to take it. So, all right. So that is all I got. Thank you. Questions? Yeah.
I want to elaborate some more after that. After the stage 4, they also have to do the stability testing. So the money that they do is true. That's how much it costs.
A lot of money.
And then they have to use that 20 years to make it that while they could sell the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as the patent wears out, people copy it and they can no longer make their money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for the information. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of time to recoup their investment, so yeah. You bet. Yep.
Once they go from brand to generic, different companies can make it. They're using different foundations, and a lot of them for their drugs.
Yes.
I know it's Synthroids. There's a lot of countries that feel very strongly you need to fill the brand.
Yes.
The same one every month.
Yes.
How many drugs is that true of, that the basis of them are going to change so significantly on the generic that it will affect the drug?
I couldn't, anecdotally, in my opinion, not a lot, but yes, it's patient specific. I have a lot of patients who say, I can only take a brand name, and I will get them a brand name. They can tell the difference. The other thing, too, a lot of insurance companies, your generic company might change. So they're like, I had a blue pill, my Viagra was blue, now it's white. And it changed month to month, same medication. And they can do that just on the fly, and people say it's not working as well. So it happens frequently, but not enough where I have my list of, oh, this is brand name only. I always write generic automatically, just for cost savings.
Then almost 90% of the cases, that's all the insurance is going to pay for.
Exactly. And that's why I do my practice. I just write generic, and if they need brand name, I'll write for that. But I do have a lot of pushback from patients, and I think it's patient specific. Yeah. Thyroid hormone is a big one. Yeah. Yes.
The website again, if you always Google.
This is an app you can get. It's called Epocrates. EPOCRATES. It's free. Every med student should have it. I have it still. You guys, I mean, it's free and it's great information. You type in any medication, you get the dosages, you get the mechanism of action, you get the pregnancy category. It's great and free. Yes.
At what point do they do in the study, do they have the patients who are getting the placebo or the fake thing?
Phase 2. Yeah. Phase 1, you're getting the real deal to see, and then phase 2 and beyond, you're getting the placebo controlled. And even the investigator will not know who's getting what. Now, you can game it. I mean, you can tell a lot. Well, this patient's getting a lot better. This patient is not, but you never are unblinded till later. So, yeah. Oh, the Epocrates? So it's just an app. Let me spell it again, and I'll show you afterwards. So it's called EPOCRATES, Epocrates. And it's just, you just go on the web store or on the app store. Yeah, it's right there. That's what it looks like. It's a good one. Yes, ma'am.
What happens regarding drugs that you buy in Canada? Are the drug companies recouping any of their research monies when you get these cheaper overseas?
Not that I know of. I think I think that's a product of the socialized medicine in Canada. So their drugs are cheaper because the government dumps a lot more money into their healthcare system. I think they're purchasing them from anywhere, and they're just controlling it, the price, and making it cheaper. But I don't know a whole lot about, I'll tell a patient if they know a source, across the border, then get it. It's the same medication. There's brand names you can get, yeah. So I'll be happy to write them a prescription. They're like, hey, I do this mail order in Canada. Can you write it? Yes, I can. Yeah. Training. We spend a lot, residency training, medical school. No, correct. It's illegal for them to do that. But it's all about in your training and just passed down from, you hear, your attending physician, you learn that that's what, speaking of gabapentin, it's the biggest garbage medication I've ever seen. I hate it. I've never initiated a gabapentin prescription in 20 years of doing medicine. I'm not kidding you. I'll let a neurologist do it for seizure disorder, but everything else we use it for, it's garbage. Usually if I see a new patient, I'll take them off gabapentin. Just a little something to throw out there. Yeah. Yep.
So, does that involve that there's types of blinding, like you have the single blind where the pharmacy may know what
Right.
the patients are getting.
Right.
Double blind or they may not. So we may know if the patients are actually getting placebo or
Yep. And that's all baked into the protocols. So it all depends on, these protocols are, books, they're huge. And it's all a matter of how they want their outcomes. And a lot has to do with what the FDA directs too. Hey, you got to make this double blinded or not. So a lot goes into that. Yeah. Yeah. Some of the people I had in my studies, they were in it for 16 months, 2 years. They were our research subjects. So, good way to make some money. Was there another question? Yeah.
So I teach the pharmacy law class at college where I'm at, and I have some of these exact same slides in terms of the time and cost. But what has come up in the last year, as you might imagine, is how did the COVID vaccine get approved in such a short period of time,
Right.
given the averages of some
Yes.
of the other new products?
My insight is limited, but what I tell my patients is, because it was an emergency response, that the federal government footed the bill. So all this money, the drug company has to come up with themselves. They have to fund their own R&D. Federal government funded Pfizer, the vaccines. So when the federal government is paying for the R&D, you can do it quick. Otherwise, these companies have to raise the funds themselves. That's why it could take.
And there were probably a lot more volunteers.
Oh yeah. And yeah, so that's what I tell my patients. It's the same approval process. We didn't cut corners with the science and the safety. It's just the funding came from a different source, and that's why they were able to do it quick.
like trials are like 1 to 4 years, so obviously that could happen.
Well, these are vaccines, so vaccine trials can be shorter, and they're still ongoing. And again, it's emergency use too. So once they got approved, I think 13 months maybe, something like that. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
You bet.